What was your "this person is on another level of stupid" moment? Dude burned down his convenience store for an insurance claim, and stopped the milk and bread deliveries the day before. Going through security and the person says I need to show a different form of ID. I ask why because I gave them my driver's license. They say I need a US document like a green card or something. I'm a US citizen. Then I realized. I explained how District of Columbia is long for DC. Like Washington, D.C., as in the capital of our country. Demolished my right foot, and a bunch of other crap, in a motorcycle crash and had to have the top of my foot removed. Guy the first worked with asked me when it would grow back. I explained that the skin and stuff was going to have to be grafted. But the tendons and bones that had been removed were gone forever. He looked me dead in the eye and asked, why don't they just cut the whole freaking thing off and let it grow back? I got a bad grade in geography in high school. My teacher kept trying to push me and suggested I talk to my parents about it. I told my mom I was failing geography and she said, "How freaking stupid can you really be, Justin? How do you fail geography? It's just shapes." I'll never forget that one. Edit. Thank you all for the upvotes. I've started sharing some of my true stories like this one and the Reddit community has been very nice to me. I really appreciate it. Coworker bought a low-flow shower head. He filled the bathtub using the new low-flow shower head because it would use less water. While driving from one big city to another, I stopped in a small town to eat at a fast food chain in Texas. I order my food, get my orange number tent and sit down to wait for my order. The lady who's bringing out orders has this "I give up" demeanor as she's calling out numbers that guests aren't claiming. Each time this happens, she speaks to a couple tables to seemingly figure out who food is for. Then I hear her call for number 55 while holding a tray of food for one person. I was number 54 and noticed I was the only single-party guest there. We make eye contact and she heads towards me. She confirms my order with me and says, "Sorry, for some reason the computer prints one number higher." I immediately ask, "Well then why don't you just call out one number lower than what's printed?" She freezes and I can see the gears turning in her head. I tell her, "Thank you," and she goes on her way. The time I watched someone who had missed their exit on the highway stop on the shoulder, back up, turn around, and go up the entrance ramp. I could not freaking believe it. Edit. A couple of fun details about this incident to really highlight its stupidity. Asterisk. The next exit was a few miles up the road. Going to that exit and then turning around might have delayed their drive by 15 minutes tops. Asterisk. There was no traffic ahead. Asterisk. I watched this person do this as I was coming down that same entrance ramp to get onto the highway. I work for Parks Canada in Yoho National Park. I have been asked the question, "Seriously, where do you keep the animals at night?" Twice in my career. To this day I still find great joy imagining what they thought was going on each night as we collected every large animal in the parks. Back when the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster happened, we were discussing how the reactor had failed in a science class. 5 minutes into the conversation a girl piped up and said, "I don't see what the big deal is. Why can't we just regrow it?" She dead-ass thought a nuclear power plant was a plant. Summer camp counselor made all the kids on a school bus keep the windows up on a hot day because they could feel the air conditioning coming from the front of the bus. It was so hot and I, maybe 10 years old at the time, had to explain to the 40-year-old counselor that the air conditioning they were feeling was the wind coming in through the bus driver's open window. She still didn't believe me. I begged her to ask the bus driver to confirm the bus did not have air conditioning, but she didn't want to bother him while he was driving. It was like a 1-hour bus trip. She finally got hot enough and asked the bus driver if the bus had air conditioning. And he jokingly said, "The bus only has air conditioning when the windows are down and the wheels are turning." She then looked back at me and said, "See, I told you the bus had air conditioning," and proceeded to force us to keep the windows up. We asked our classmate to prove she knew the 7 continents. Her list went like this: North America, Europe, China, the Pacific Ocean. I crap you not. Watching a man try to open the locked front door of my shop while a bright red closed sign was literally inches from his face. He kept looking at the door like it was just stuck. There was a girl in my high school who forced the teacher to pause a documentary about people living in mud huts in Africa because she was upset that they were showing us fictional movies in a history class. It took everyone else in the room to convince her that people actually live like that in some places. Wealthy area living for ya. How much is a $50 worth? She was the newest teller my boss hired. We'll never forget that moment. Had someone ask me, "Is Europe on Earth?" I was friends with a guy who believed those fake Apple adverts like, "Apple Wave, microwave your phone for instant battery charge." I was so dumbfounded that he actually fell for it. When I saw him the week after and he had a new phone, it all clicked for me. Knew a girl in middle school that didn't understand the concept of perspective. She also thought north was whichever direction you were facing at the time. When I was younger, I was mad that everyone else had an accent and I didn't. 3 years later I realized that I did in fact have an accent and that I was on another level of stupid. A friend didn't have coins for a vending machine but did have $1. She folded up the dollar and forced it into the coin slot and then did not understand why she did not get her item. For me, I had a concussion and was getting x-rays taken. They gave me a lead blanket to wrap around my twig and berries. I took it and wrapped it around me like a cape. I could not understand what they wanted me to do. Once in middle school, I simply could not get the concept of the phrase, "the day after tomorrow," through to a kid. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. Edit. It's swell that many of you know the word overmorrow. I am proud of you. This incident was decades ago. I won't be sharing overmorrow with him anytime. Someone in my history class argued that Mussolini was a type of pasta. Not me, but a friend worked in a call center for a CC company in the disputes department. The number one item people called to say they never purchased: interest charge. I used to work with a girl who was sweet but so dumb. We were in a meeting once and somehow someone mentioned baked ham. My manager said, "Ugh, I hate ham. It looks like human flesh." The girl I mentioned was sitting next to me and looked horrified and whispered, "Does ham really come from people?" I was a co-hostess with a girl in a restaurant, watching ads on a hanging TV for a new movie. At the end, it said, "Coming soon to a theater near you," to which she turned to me with wide eyes and genuinely asked, "How do they know where I live?" Edit. There are so many more stories about this chick, but this one summed it up the best. She also had to stop walking to drink anything or she'd fall over. And didn't understand that not all women have to wax their mustaches because not all women have them. She was 20. I worked at a restaurant and we had a dish that was just a whole grilled chicken, chopped into pieces. A woman who ordered for delivery called us absolutely scathing, complaining that her order of one whole chicken only contained 2 chicken breasts. Had to explain to grown-ass woman that chicken only have 2 breasts. Edit. To clarify, the rest of the chicken was also there. She was just expecting more than 2 chicken breasts. She stated this clearly to both me and my manager, who she insisted she speak to over this inconvenience. Me. When I was a kid, I had a real old transistor radio. Asked my parents for a newer radio, so I could receive and listen to newer music. A group of late teens sitting outside my building assuring each other that all criminal charges would be dropped when they reached 21. DUIs, drug charges, traffic violations, everything. I walked away shaking my head because they were in for a reality check. Rescued a coworker on the side of the road with a flat tire. Waiting for the tow truck, I pointed out the nail at the top of their tire. They scoffed and looked at me like I was the stupidest person in the world and exclaimed, "That's not true BC, it's flat at the bottom." I just walked away and never brought it up again. We were talking about the Irish potato famine in college, and this one girl said, "Oh wow, I thought it was the potato family," as if that wasn't enough. She later asked, why were they so eager to get jobs? If I was that hungry I wouldn't even try to get a job. Man, I wish I was joking. At the time I was working at a grocery store that had a Coinstar machine. Basically you could place all of your unwrapped change in it and it would be converted for a small fee that you could use for actual cash. I was walking past and noticed a woman struggle with the machine. I stopped to help her. Turns out she had accidentally hit Spanish as a language selection. I quickly explained what she needed to do, figuring she couldn't read Spanish. We were in the US. And this is where her struggles came from. So I run through how it works and show her where the receipt will print out that she can turn in at customer service for the cash. She turns and looks at me and says, "But I don't want Spanish money." Sigh. Then I have to explain to her that she would get paid in US dollars. I had a coworker who could never figure out what time her 15-minute break was over. We were both bank tellers. I had to explain to a woman that apples did not contain any gluten, meat, or dairy ingredients. How can one think apples contain dairy? She thought gluten was found in every major grain, and that apples were a grain because they have seeds. My friend is allergic to walnuts. One day, he made this sandwich in our college dorm. It had walnuts garnished on top of the bread. I then remember him telling me, "Oh look, there's walnuts on here," and proceeds to eat the entire sandwich. At the time I didn't know he was allergic. I leave to shower, and when I come back there are 2 paramedics in our dorm taking him out on a stretcher. The following day I asked what happened, to which he replies something along the line, "I accidentally ate some walnuts which I'm allergic to, and by the time I went to get a Benadryl, my throat had started to close and I couldn't swallow it, so I had to call 911. I was just utterly shocked how he even let this entire situation happen. I really couldn't believe it. He had known there were walnuts on the bread and still ate it. College days. Am I right? Edit. He knew he was allergic to walnuts, but he's very careless, so it was one of those YOLO moments. Luckily I don't think he did that ever again. Ex-flatmate cancelled the gas and electricity contract because it was too expensive. Wondered why we had no more electricity nor gas. She thought we paid €90 a month to get a hotline 24/7 in case of problem. In high school I met a boy who asked me for a hygienic cloth because he thought he had a period. Actually he only sat on a melted popsicle. I got a concussion a while back. A friend of mine told me not to come close because it might be contagious. They weren't kidding. I was once asked how it felt to come to the US as a refugee. I'm from Germany. She then looked rather surprised when I told her that Hitler has been dead for 75 years and that Germany is one of the more liberal countries in the world these days. She full-on thought I fled Nazi Germany. I worked at a meat desk for a summer job, and a woman came in and asked if we had any meat without spices or sauces. She then proceeded to tell us that the doctor had said that her dogs got sick because she kept feeding them pizza and they couldn't handle the spices. She then said, "Oh, but they love pizza so much. I feel bad for them. I'm probably still gonna feed them pizza." My wife's cousin and her husband, not baby daddy of her unborn child, fell on self-induced hard times and needed a place to stay for a bit. We set up a queen-sized air mattress in the living room for them. For 3 weeks I woke up to go to work and every morning saw them sleeping on it sideways with their legs hanging off the edge. Then one day she asked me to buy her a bigger air mattress because this one was hard on their backs. I told her to turn her body. The fricking thing even has a built-in pillow on one end. Her response was that then they couldn't see the TV. Then fricking turn the air mattress to face the TV. That's the story of how I became an a-hole to the trailer trash side of the family. The bad part is that it's only one of many stories. The husband was a cook at Applebee's. The baby daddy was a cook at Applebee's. And her new husband was another cook from the same fricking Applebee's. All working together. A old coworker was telling me that there's people out there that think Alaska is an island. I laughed in disbelief, but another coworker overheard and was flabbergasted. "What? It's not. But it's always drawn off to the side with Hawaii." Point made. Another time a guy with a really thick accent walked in. Same girl was like, "Oh wow, I like your accent, where are you from?" Said guy, "Have a guess." Her response, "Haveaguess. I've never heard of that place before." And walked away. She is super sweet, just slightly oblivious. I once forgot to bring my laptop to school, so my mom had to bring it in. My maths teacher was notified and she sent me a message telling me to pick up my laptop at the front office. But the only way I could see the message is if I had my laptop with me.